Welcome to the Lonestar Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week, our guest is Wendy and Coltyn Turner. Wendy's here already. Coltyn will be joining us later on. Good evening.
Good evening.
How is everybody?
You say good evening like you're supposed to say good evening, infidels. You know that. What's his name? That little puppet. That
Ahmed. Yeah, the dead terrorist. Good evening, infidels.
Yes.
Very serious. I haven't seen that in a long time, man.
I have to listen to it every time Colton's around because he's just hilarious when he's constantly repeating that because it's funny.
Yeah, so that's one of his favorites. Then I take it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Any comedy is good for Coltyn. He loves comedy.
I had the pleasure of going to see Chris Rock. Speaking about comedy, got to see him a few weeks back here in Austin, the Moody Center. Very, very entertaining experience.
I bet that was.
I bet.
So, you work with your son, obviously, doing advocacy for cannabis work. Give us some backstory about yourself and your son Coltyn.
Okay. So in 2011, Coltyn was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and he drowned in a Boy Scout lake camp out and triggered his Crohn's. And we did the normal treatments, that the westernized medications that everybody does when you have a diagnosis of Crohn's. We went through all the Remicade and the Humira and the methotrexate and the 6-MP and gosh, I can't even remember all of the stuff that he's been through because it's been so long. And he got really, really, really sick. He has severe debilitating Crohn's disease. And when he was on Remicade, he ended up getting antibodies against Remicade. So he had serum sickness. And then that turned into rheumatoid arthritis. And so now he has rheumatoid arthritis because that's a side effect. And then another side effect of Remicade was lupus. So he ended up with lupus. And then we changed to methotrexate, and methotrexate gave him this horrible nosebleeds and bad headaches that he still contends with today. And then Humira, when we were on Humira, he ended up with a tuberculosis scare. And we went to the hospital. This is just a ridiculous story. We went to the hospital because his lymph nodes were really, really swollen. They look like little golf balls stuck in his throat. And they said, "Oh, you have tuberculosis." They tested him for it. He tested positive for tuberculosis. They quarantined us. Then they said, "Well, we need to take your lymph nodes out and test them because there's like 3 different types of tuberculosis." And we were like, okay. So we ended up scheduling this surgery on September 13th, which was a Friday the 13th. Yeah. And we went in, got his lymph nodes taken out. He had a big slit in his throat where they took the lymph nodes out. And then we got a call Monday morning at 8:00. And they said, "No, you have to take him back to the hospital. Something's up, something's wrong." The pathology came back that they got salivary glands and not lymph nodes. And we were like, what?
What in the world?
Took out salivary glands and not lymph nodes?
Your surgeon doesn't know the difference?
Well, and it was under quarantine. He was the head ENT of the hospital. And there were 4 people in the room including Coltyn. So there were 3, the ENT, the doctor that did the surgery, the nurse, and then the anesthesiologist and Coltyn. And we were like, "You've got to be flipping kidding me. There's just no way that we are going to go back to you after you tell us that you took out salivary glands." So I'm Googling, what do salivary glands look like? And they're like little
nothing like lymph nodes.
Yeah, not lymph nodes. And I'm like, how do you not know the difference? And you're the head ENT. So we went to back to the Mayo Clinic, because he was a patient at the Mayo Clinic. The majority of his westernized medication times. And they said he does not have tuberculosis, but we do think that he has T-cell lymphoma, which is another side effect to these medications. And so we went through the rigmarole of getting him tested for T-cell lymphoma. He ended up with architectural cells that were precancerous. And then they were like, well, there's nothing we can do now. If he develops full-blown T-cell lymphoma with any other medication that we put him on, like Entyvio or Stelara or anything like that, then he'll die. He's not going to survive this.
Yeah.
So they said, take him home, make him comfortable, wait for the lymphoma to do something, to get active. And then in the meantime, he's not on any kind of medications for his Crohn's disease. So he deteriorates really, really fast. And doing a surgery or anything like that was like taking like 10 feet of intestines out and having dual bags, because he would have to have a bag for his bladder and a bag for his intestines. And it was just not feasible.
That's a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
That's a nightmare. It's already a nightmare, but it's like that's piling onto it.
Unfortunately, that's not the first time I've heard that scenario.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's not. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is very common. So everybody's like, oh, Coltyn. He's done well in the cannabis industry, and in the cannabis community, and well with cannabis. But the thing is that he is a normal kid. He has not had any, other than the lymph node situation. He's not had anything that has happened to him that it hasn't happened to another Crohn's patient. But in his case, my husband and I fight really, really hard against these doctors to make the right decisions for him. And most people don't have that option. So what happens is that they end up having the surgery. They end up getting T-cell lymphoma. They end up dealing with the side effects, because the doctors are saying the side effects aren't as bad as what the disease is. So when you take these medications, you have to take them because the disease is going to kill you, and the side effects are just side effects. But some of these side effects are going to kill you.
That's the part they leave out.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that, like, I was on Humira at one point, and I was lucky that when I did get MRSA and I wound up in the hospital and getting quarantined and almost losing my leg, that the doctor had made the comment of, sometimes the cure is worse than the disease, so I'm going to take you off the cure.
Yep.
You can't afford this. We got to end this now.
Yeah. But see, you had a really good doctor, and you're very, very lucky.
I had crummy military care. That speaks volumes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, you were lucky enough in that crummy military care to have a doctor who knew what he was doing and cared.
Yes.
Right. Or at least saw that this wasn't working.
Yeah.
And could admit to the fact that this isn't working. And a lot of doctors can't do that. So we have these issues where, we have patients that have the same symptoms and issues that Coltyn did, but their outcome is completely different because they are listening to the doctors, and the doctors just don't really care that much. They're busy with their next patient and, busy with other things, and they just don't really take the time. And a lot of doctors are just overwhelmed. So they don't have the time. So I encourage anybody out there listening, if you have a child that has any kind of biological things that are going on in his brain, that, he understands biological sciences, get him into doctoring and nursing and helping people, because we don't have enough doctors out there.
Not enough doctors like that anyway.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we encourage as many young people to get into the medical practice as possible. But, we ended up, finding this all out because of trial and error. And, it was just one thing after another. And Coltyn ended up in a wheelchair. He looked like a cancer patient with hair. He looked like death. I mean, he was so skinny. He was about 80 pounds, and he was in failure to thrive and failure to grow. He was just continually losing weight and just not eating. And then we ended up watching the documentary about Charlotte Figge and Charlotte's Web. And we were like, yeah. And we were like, well, if it helps her, and they were talking about how it stimulated her appetite. And, everybody knows that, cannabis and marijuana gives you the munchies. So we were like, well, maybe if we gave him that, he'd eat.
Yeah.
And logical thinking.
So that's how it started out. It was from an appetite perspective. Okay. I was going to ask how y'all came about with the whole cannabis, the trying it and experimenting, and because that was going to be the next thing. How did you find it? What got you there? And what was your reasoning behind it? And so it's interesting that appetite was the reasoning behind it. So tell us how it went from there, how it progressed to actually being a treatment.
Well, Coltyn will never eat a brownie for the rest of his life, because we gave him brownies because it's the only thing that we knew how to do. And he was 13, so we weren't going to allow him to smoke. But we ended up seeing Charlotte's. Say that again.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were trying to be decent parents. But we saw Charlotte and we were like, well, if it's an appetite suppressor or a antagonist, then we probably need to try it. So then I started doing my research. And it's really, I say research, and then now that I'm actually into research, I wasn't doing, I was Googling, and I Googled a lot, and I Googled everything that I could possibly think of when it comes to cannabis and Crohn's, or just cannabis. But I ended up stumbling over a study that came out of Israel in October of 2013, that was for Crohn's disease. And it looked like, how it read, it looked like it could have been very close to beating placebo. So that's unheard of. But the trial was really informative, and it really helped me make a decision that, hey, we need to give this to him. And so we found a friend of ours who we knew where it was, a closeted stoner, and said, hey, do you have anything that we could give Coltyn? And we ended up making brownies. Sure. And then about 2 weeks after, when he started the brownies, about 2 weeks afterwards, he was a totally different kid. And this was in October of 2013. And it was cold outside, and we had all the windows open in our house because we didn't want our house to smell like cannabis, and our neighbors freak out. It was just crazy. So we ended up making the brownies. He ended up doing well. And then all of a sudden, we're in Colorado. So it really helped.
Well, it is getting to be our break time here at the Lonestar Collective podcast. So we're gonna just move on to our sponsor segment here for a moment. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. This week, our guest is Wendy Turner. Her son, Coltyn Turner, will be joining us here shortly on the Lonestar Collective podcast this week. We'll be right back after our sponsor break.
Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lonestar Collective podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta-8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, the first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective. Distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more, to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week, our guest is Wendy Turner. Her son, Coltyn Turner, will be joining us real soon. We've been talking about their backstory and how they stumbled into cannabis for treating Crohn's and rheumatoid arthritis and lymphoma, and an ENT doctor that doesn't know the difference between his butt and a hole in the ground, apparently.
For sure.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jesse, but I was
for
curious before we went into the break there. I was thinking in the back of my mind as listening to you tell a story. How long, what was the time frame from diagnosis through all the different drugs and all that hoopla that you led us through to cannabis? What was the time frame between start to that finding cannabis?
So Coltyn drowned on June 3rd of 2011. He was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in September of 2011. He was fully diagnosed with Crohn's disease by the Mayo Clinic because they only gave us a little bit of a a diagnosis, like 75%, in January of 2012. So we absolutely knew what we were dealing with. And then 2013, October of 2013 is when we started using cannabis, or we tried it. And then February of 2014 it was March 4th of 2014 is when we moved to Colorado. October 24th of 2014 is when we discovered that he was in complete clinical remission.
Wow. That's just crazy. Now, you say that he won't eat another brownie. So I got to ask, if brownies was what helped him, what's up with the brownies?
Well, that's the only thing that we knew how to make.
Yeah.
So, just sick of it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, he ate so many brownies. So he ate brownies in 2 weeks in October. And then we had to take him off of cannabis because he had to go back to the Mayo Clinic for a colonoscopy. And so we had to make sure that his system was clean, because we'd get thrown in jail. Yeah. And then from March 4th to about sometime at the end of March, maybe around the 29th or 25th, something like that. From then he ate brownies. So he ate 3 brownies a day.
Oh Lord.
For a little over a month.
Enough said. Yeah. Tired of brownies.
Oh my gosh. Tired of brownies. We were tired of making brownies. And
so what did you figure out an alternate way, obviously, for him to take it?
Well, we started doing some interesting research with Charlotte's Web. And that's the reason why we moved to Colorado. We found another caregiver that made something very similar, same strain, but different carrier oil. And so we started giving him just regular CBD, and then we kept giving him edibles. So he would take, cookies, or we figured out how to infuse other foods. Goldfish crackers was his go-to, his favorite. We ended up trying juicing and things like that. But then we ended up finding out that we could extract the THC and the CBD in 2 separate bottles. So his caregiver made him a CBD bottle and a THC bottle, and we were able to dose it together in a way to where we understood how much cannabis how much THC he was actually getting per dose. And once we started doing that, we really found that he felt the best at a 1-to-1 ratio. So we were putting, 15 milligrams of CBD in a capsule, and then 15 milligrams of THC in a capsule. And that he really felt like he felt energetic. He wasn't tired, but he wasn't not sleeping. So when you have Crohn's disease, you have insomnia, but you have fatigue. You can't sleep, but
you're
you can't.
You're in pain.
Yeah.
You're in pain and you can't sleep, but then your body's like, I don't have the energy for this at all.
Exactly.
It's like you've got the flu nonstop.
Oh, nonstop. That's the worst flu that you can possibly get. Is like Crohn's disease. And then, on top of it, having all the body aches of rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And, so we ended up dosing him to where both of those things could, we ended up at a 1-to-1, that's how he felt good.
Yeah.
And then we finally got a colonoscopy on October 24th of 2014. And, after trial and error, after, edible, after gummies, after different carrier oils, we found that THCV does not work for him because it's an appetite suppressant. And so he was losing weight. We found out that gummies were bad for his system. We found out that coconut oil is probably not the best to give to somebody who has a Crohn's disease or UC, where they have a lot of diarrhea, because it is a diuretic and it makes you go more.
So it's a laxative of sorts.
Yeah. So, all the trial and error, we finally got a doctor that decided that they would do a colonoscopy for us, and we begged them. And they said, if this doesn't work, if he is still diseased and he still has all of this inflammation and ulcers and granulomas and everything in his system, then we are going to have to call CPS if you don't go with what we're going to tell you to do, so put him on another biological. And we were like, okay, we can see it because he's out of a wheelchair. He's throwing snowballs at his dad. He's scooping snow. He's riding his bike. He's walking up and down the street. We lived on like the foothills of the mountain. So he was walking down the side of the mountain to get to the grocery store, which was about a half a mile. But he was being a normal teenage kid. And we were like, we know that we're onto something here. We know that something is good and something is working. So we want to see the colonoscopy. We want to know how well it's doing. So we had a before colonoscopy from January 10th of 2014. And then now we have this colonoscopy from October 24th of 2014. And they're night and day. A person that doesn't know what they're looking at could understand what they're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, the pictures that come out of it, you can tell a nice, healthy colon. It just looks like flesh, like typical flesh, like the inside of your mouth. And then there's one that's disease that has sores and blisters and pus pockets, and it's bleeding and it's agitated and it's spasming.
It was disgusting.
Yeah.
But it was just crazy. His doctor was like, this is nuts. We thought for sure that she was not going to be on board. But we had to take that chance. Yeah. So we did, and we rolled the dice. And, I told Coltyn one time, I said, when you're diagnosed with Crohn's disease, these are the cards that you're dealt. It's time to play the game. And after that colonoscopy, he looked at me and he's like, remember that time when you told me that these are the cards that we were dealt? And I said, yeah. And he's like, well, we got a hand of twos, but we're winning. And I'm like, it's how you play the game, and we may be winning with twos, but we're still winning.
Yeah.
And it was an absolutely incredible sight to see. His doctor was like, I don't know what to say. I ended up getting phone calls from her, from other patients, that she couldn't give advice to any patient that was coming into her, any pediatric patient, because it's still federally illegal. It was just Colorado that was doing this. They just, passed rec, and it was a big controversy. And so the doctor was like really hesitant to talk to patients about using cannabis, but she wanted to. But she couldn't do it because of the policy that the hospital had. But I could. So she would give them my phone number, and they would call me, and I would sit down with them and say, okay, this is your endocannabinoid system. This is what we did. This is where we feel like you should start. And we, just work together. And she probably sent me, 30 to 40 patients that were using cannabis for Crohn's disease out of her office. And then her brother got involved in it. And now they have like a grow and a cultivation center and all sorts of stuff. So they're actually doing some really, really good work.
Cool. And all these people are having success, I take it, or most of them at least?
As far as I know. I don't really get a lot of updates, other than the occasional, I heard your story, and I decided to contact you, and we go through what to do. And then, 2 or 3 months later, they're like, oh, by the way, they're doing great. There's only been one time that we've ever had a patient come back to us and say it doesn't work. And I don't know if they were actually,
it's its own little balance. There's some people that react very differently. Like I was reading through y'all's site that you had tried CBD only, and CBD only did not work. And there's people that CBD only works for them.
Right.
There's people that THC only works for them. And it's this balancing act of figuring out. And then there's some people that just aren't responsive. And that's the luck of the draw, unfortunately.
And it is. Or sometimes it's just not, maybe you need more CBD. Maybe I ended up in Topeka, Kansas a couple of weeks ago, working on some legislation for Kansas. And I ran across a senator that said, oh, my wife has MS and she tried CBD and it didn't work. And this was the reason why he wasn't going to vote yes for the bill.
Yeah.
And I said, well, CBD didn't work for my kid either. I said, but we kept trying different avenues of cannabis, and we found something that did work, and THC worked. Did she try THC? And he's like, well, no, why, we would never do something like that. And I said, well, but maybe she needs to. I said, my son was 13 years old and he wasn't high. I said, so if that's what you're afraid of something that it's a myth. You can actually use cannabis and not be high. And he's like, well, I'm still going to vote no. And I said, well, you're voting no for kids like my son, who cannabis does work for. I said, it's not fair to them that you would vote no just because CBD didn't work for your wife, and we don't even know what she took and how much she took.
Yeah.
You can't give us any details.
It's like, that's, wow, dude, you're going to lash out at everybody else because it didn't work for you and your wife. So now everybody else faces a penalty because, well, didn't work for me. Everybody else suffers with me. Get in my boat. It's like, really?
It'd be like not approving something like Theraflu or something over the counter that helps with flu, or what's the prescription drug, Jesse, that I'm trying to think of for the flu. What is that one?
That retroviral?
Yeah, I can't even think of the name of it.
I want to call it Theraflu.
One of the, Theraflu's an over-the-counter thing, but anything at all, hydrocodone for that matter. If it didn't work for some, why would you not at least approve it for the people like they have for the people that it does help?
Tamiflu, that's the name of it.
Tamiflu, that's it.
Yeah. Tamiflu, yes.
But why would you not approve that because it didn't help Joe or Susie over here when it helps 20 other people on the other side? It makes no sense. And
there's Coltyn Turner. The thing is that we have been up against senators and representatives, that one senator that actually told him that he could die and that was okay with him because it wasn't FDA approved. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So just because it's not FDA approved means that he can't take it. So that means that he could die from not taking this medication, and that's okay with you. And they said yes. And I said some choice words.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And
insanity.
Say that again.
I said it's insanity.
It is insanity. I just don't understand. I just don't understand it.
Let's hear Coltyn talk about this.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Glad to see you, Coltyn.
I was at work. Ugh. But
facts of life.
But yeah, it's an absurd way of thinking that these politicians or these people who are appointed and are the people who are meant to represent us, the people, only care about the people as a statistic. When the people are coming up to them and saying, hey, this is a problem and this needs to be solved, they're like, oh, well, it's not in our system, so it's not our problem. We don't care. Regardless of whether or not it's American lives at stake, they don't care because it doesn't fit into their charts and their schedules and their rosters. So it's a ridiculous thought that these politicians and all of these people are just ignoring the vast majority of people that are benefiting from this medicine, but they don't care. They don't consider them as people.
Yeah.
It's really sad, and it's something that we need to change because, what's wrong with using cannabis as a medicine when all these other medications are okay?
It's that thing of unless it happens to me, it's not something I need to worry about. Mm-hmm. Unless it happens to my family, I don't care. And it's like, wow, you're a representative. Your job's to take care of your constituents, not just the ones the people close to you.
Absolutely.
Right. And when people are going up to you and saying, hey, this medication isn't FDA approved, but it's helping people, help us make this medicine available. They go, nah. And as a matter of fact, if your kid dies, I don't care.
Yeah, I can't fathom that because, I don't know if y'all are aware or realize or not, but my kid did die because he didn't have access. And that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do. And to hear that a politician told you that just shakes me to my core that anybody would even have the gall to do that. And I apologize to you for that because that's insanity. It's most extreme form, in my opinion. I mean, that's why I do this, because I don't want any other parent to have to do what I do each and every day, which wake up and he's the first thought that comes to my mind. Period. And of course his story is different than yours. His was epilepsy, and medications made his condition worse. And I believe medications are the reason why he died.
Absolutely.
Because he went from, unpatternistic, could be 3 months in between, could be a year and a half. And then it was 2-3 times a week right before he passed away. So, and the only thing he did was medication. So we got to go to break. So
it is time for our sponsored break here at the Lonestar Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. Our guests are Wendy and Coltyn Turner. We'll be right back after these sponsor messages.
Oak Cliff Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lonestar Collective Podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta 8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, the first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective Podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective, distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more, to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome to the Lonestar Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. Our guests are Wendy and Coltyn Turner. Welcome back.
Thanks for having us back.
So this has been quite the discussion we've had about crones and senators and representatives telling you, I don't care if you die in a ditch. Because that's basically what that equated to.
His name was Doug Lamborn. So we have to tell people that.
Remember his name, Doug Lamborn.
Yep. In Colorado, Doug Lamborn. There's a huge Facebook page that says vote Doug Lamborn out, but we're not being very successful because he got voted back in.
We know what that feels like here in Texas.
Yeah.
We most certainly do.
So how is Texas, by the way? I have my son lives in Texas, so he's an official Texan.
Yeah.
All depends on what parts you want to know about.
If you live in Austin, we basically have from my understanding, I learned this last week, we got a weed delivery service in this city now. Apparently there's a guy running around that you call him up and tell him you want some weed and he'll deliver it to you.
This is legal or is he not legal?
So what it is our state constitution apparently as long as a city has a charter and is what's called a home rule city, they can prioritize what they want to enforce and not enforce. So as long as the state legislature doesn't prohibit this non-enforcement or enforcement, and an example in cannabis in Texas is explicitly in our hemp law, a county or city cannot ban hemp. You cannot outlaw it. So the legislature has specifically said you cannot outlaw this or create ordinances against it. But there's no rule in our law that says you have to enforce the cannabis law with marijuana. So Austin and a couple other cities, Austin's been the biggest one so far, as we have gone as far as decriminalizing misdemeanor amounts of flour. And our DA has said, I'm not going to even go after personal usage amounts of concentrates either.
Good for them.
I'm pretty sure that 5 cities in Texas also just decriminalized low-level possession as well. I can't say the names off the top of my head.
We've been putting out information about that. It was so we had San Marcos, Harker Heights, Elgin, Colleen, and Denton.
Oh.
And so far, Denton, their city council voted to go ahead and accept the result, but their city manager is saying, nope, I'm not going to have the police department ignore this. Harker Heights voted to repeal it. They're like, we're not accepting this ordinance at all.
Yeah.
The city of Colleen has said, well, we're not going to vote for it and we're not going to vote against it. Let's see about altering it. So we're going to put this to the wayside and get some advice first.
That's nuts. I don't understand how, when people vote something in, that you can take it away from them. That's not how this democracy works.
That's the way of the way they think today. You know, I don't get it either. But it's like the thought process of, okay, 60. I think the lowest number. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse. The lowest number in one of these 5 jurisdictions for approval was 62%.
I believe that was, it's either Colleen or Elgin.
I believe it was Elgin, if I'm not mistaken, but it might have been Colleen. But one of them was by 82%.
Oh, San Marcos had like 82%.
So, I mean, every one of them are clearly more than a majority, right? And so how can you not understand that to repeal this, as they did, and what was it, did you say, Harker Heights?
Yeah, Harker Heights completely voted to repeal this.
Did they not understand that their political careers just ended with the next election for their office?
That's something that I'm like,
I know. It's just so weird because has it? I mean, come on, you guys voted back in Greg Abbott.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Well, and
it's a stupid reason, but there is a reason for that. And that's because his very viable opponent made one stupid mistake early on. And he said he was still coming after their guns, and that ruined it.
You can't do that to Texas. Yep. As a matter of fact, federally, you have the right, and I don't understand that. I don't understand why taking away rights is something that
none of this makes any sense. None of it, as even his opponent pointed out, he's like, none of it makes sense because Florida apparently was allowed to take away those rights, but yet. Our governor here is going, no, you can't do that. And it's like, well, why is the SCOTUS basically saying this state can do it, but that state can't?
Well, what I don't understand is that
none of it makes any sense.
They can take your rights away if you're a cannabis patient. So that's your right to be healthy, right? Mm-hmm. But yet they would rather take your cannabis rights away or your medical rights away, but not your gun rights. And I'm a Second Amendment person. I grew up on a farm. My
sure.
family has a hunting lodge. We, that was one big thing that was going on with Coltyn. When he left for Colorado, his grandpa bought him his first rifle, and he was never able to use it because we had to move out of the state.
If I remember correctly, DPS had made an announcement a year or so back for Texas, saying that if you were in the compassionate use program, that as far as they understood, you had not lost gun rights. And I guess it's because the way that the state has structured the program, they feel it falls within their federal right to try laws, which are the actual name of those laws are called compassionate use program laws.
Sure.
The media term for it is right to try.
Yeah. Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that difference.
I see Colton's itching to say something. What's on your mind, buddy?
Well, the thing is that it shouldn't. When you become a medical patient, it shouldn't take away your right to own a firearm, because when in recreational states, as long as you're over the age of 21, you can walk into a dispensary, buy as much as you want, as much as you're legally allowed to buy,
sure,
and then walk out and still own the right to your firearms. If you're a medical patient, you're being forced to disarm yourself, and not only that, but it's because of an industry that doesn't have federal backing, which means that there's no banking, which means it's an all cash business, which means that you're a sick patient walking around with no weapon and tons of cash.
I have a theory for why they try to do that. As you put it, that's a good way to put it. You're disarming yourself to be a medical patient. But my theory is, I'm a avid student for over 40 years of politics, government, and economics, our political parties, the whole ball of wax, and it's a miracle that my mind hasn't just exploded with all that crap. But before my son passed away and I started in the cannabis world, right, that was my thing of interest. And my theory is that's one of those backdoor ideas that if we put this in there, that's going to be a deterrent to keep more people from getting into it. And by doing so, we'll make it less successful and less likely to progress. That's my thought. That's why they put that in there, and why they want you to give up your rights.
I think that it has a lot to do with reefer madness and the idea of, oh, this person is going to use the marijuana. Let's make sure that they don't have a gun so they don't go on a killing spree.
Well, there's that aspect too.
Because the people have that mentality that people who use cannabis
they've been able to convince people still to this day that they're like, well, the government's right about that. And it's like, why? Well, aren't they right? And it's strange because, sometimes these are the same people like, I don't trust the government to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but you believe that propaganda about somehow the guy with marijuana is bad, but the guy who's drunk isn't.
These are the same people walking around saying, I don't want the government to know my face or to know where I am. Meanwhile, they're walking around with a driver's license and an iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't want them tracking me. Got location services enabled on their phone.
Yeah, well, it was the same thing with the COVID vaccines. Everybody's, they're putting nanoprobes in there and they're going to track you and all this. And okay, you're posting that on your iPhone that you carry with you everywhere, even to the bathroom.
And I'm former military, so they're going to get your fingerprints, they're going to get your blood, they're going to know everything about you. And I'm like, they already know everything about me.
They already know everything about everybody.
They have, Illinois has my fingerprints. When Illinois just had their program getting started up, we moved back to Illinois for a little bit. And for me to get my medical card, not only did I have to get my fingerprints taken, but my dad, who was my caregiver, he also had to get his fingerprints taken.
That's insane.
And that's just part of the program. It's been removed now, but that was the idea at the time, is that they were like, we need to have our information on all these criminals. Like the criminals are the ones who are going to go through the legal system and make sure that they can, become a part of the system to get medical cannabis legally, because criminals totally do that.
Yeah.
They always follow the law. Don't you know that?
Yeah.
Except for one time. That's what made him a criminal.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one time they didn't follow the law. So,
and if they were in jail, don't you know they're also innocent? Everyone's innocent in jail.
Exactly.
Everybody. Fun system how this works. It only works this way in America, though. Very strange.
Yeah.
It is strange. I don't know why we do it. I mean, we have the power to change it. I don't know why we don't. We really do have the power.
So what's interesting is this discussion's happening, and I'm watching South Park this past week. Old season about them protesting the war in Iraq back in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
And the culmination of the episode is they basically went, well, we want to go to war, but no, we want a right to protest and not go to war. And they said, this country's founded on, we will say one thing and then do another. And it looks perfectly legit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've always said that the best, if you're going into marketing in college, then you really need to study the marketing campaign for Reefer Madness.
Yeah.
For what the government did to cannabis all those years back, in 1937, and really focus on that campaign, because they did a stellar job of convincing the whole world, not just the United States, but the whole world.
Exactly.
To that this is a bad thing and that nobody should be using it. The whole world.
Absolutely.
So, this is the best marketing campaign that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, because then not only did we make it illegal ourselves, but then we said to all these other countries, hey, we made it illegal, but we're not going to trade with you unless you make it illegal too.
Yep.
There's as I took advertising, I'm a mass communications major. Can you make your concept cool, and does it pop? And if you notice, all the way even into the 90s and 2000s, they're like, cool kids don't do drugs. Winners don't do drugs. Cool kids don't do that. You want to be cool, right? They tried exerting peer pressure. They were showing you peer pressure was what was going to take you down, and instead exerted peer pressure to try to say you were cool if you didn't do drugs, but never gave a real reason why the drugs were bad, other than this is your brain and it's nonsense.
Yeah.
We have a This Is Your Brain commercial.
So go ahead and plug y'all's website.
Well, go ahead, Coltyn.
Our website is www.coltonscrew.org. That's Coltyn with a Y and crew like Motley Crue. You can also find us on Facebook at Coltyn's Crew. You can also find the Coltyn Turner Foundation, which I believe the coltynturnerfoundation.org is our website. And we also have a Facebook page, so be sure to follow us there. I also do a lot of producing content for Illegally Healed, so be sure to go check out Illegally Healed on Facebook as well. And if you guys can help with the foundation, that means a lot, because we're trying to raise funds for research, so that way we can actually provide solid evidence that cannabis is in fact a medicine and should be treated as such. So be sure to help us out if you can. Any little bit helps.
Alrighty.
Absolutely. And I'd like to take this opportunity, Coltyn, to invite you back and talk further with us.
Absolutely, it'd be an honor.
I would love for Coltyn to get more involved in the Texas cannabis scene. I think that it's really important that we help legalize there fully.
And we
Our
welcome
legislative
all the
session's
help
coming
we
up.
can get.
We'll be there.
Alrighty. So that is going to do it for this week of the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined this week by co-host Gramps. Our guests this week are Wendy and Coltyn Turner, the Turner Foundation. You can find more information. Let me pull this back up. For those watching the video, and I'll spell it out. Coltyn's Crew, COLTYNSCRUE.org. Coltyn's Crew, like you said, crew is like Motley Crue. So we thank you for joining us this week on the Lonestar Collective podcast. Everybody have a great week and stay warm.